God would come and save the day, fix everything that was broken, and magically appear with a specific set of instructions to manage my life, and the hard work would be all his to bear. At other times, I thought I would wake up one day and just have my life together, which is sort of what happened in some respect, but not in the way that I had expected. To say that I was scared of the dark, fearful of strangers, the unknown, life and everything in it would be an understatement. I've spent most of my life in fear. Fear of what you might be saying about me behind my back, fear that there was danger lurking around every corner, fear of losing the people that I love and the things that I needed to survive. I was always in fear that you wouldn't love me if you knew the truth. I am certain that addictions always have their origins in pain, a struggle of suffering and secrecy and silence. Sometimes the present moment seems so unbearable to me that I willingly jeopardize my life just to make the present moment tolerable. Opiates promise the removal of pain, worries, and fear. The screaming loud voices of insecurities and unmet needs fading in the distance. All was finally right with the world. I just needed to get more of these great providers of comfort, warmth, and security. Eventually, my quest for more would lead me into the confines of jail cells, painfully damaged relationships, a paralyzing shame, emptiness, and only one choice left to make: prison or treatment. I made my choice. I remember feeling an incredible amount of discomfort at a very young age. I mean, even before experiencing the traumatic events that were my childhood from ages 7 to 11, I can remember a sense of anxiety. Like a core internal belief that somehow I just was not good enough. I craved that feeling of being in control, and because I wasn't, I began the unhealthy behavior that would become my first behavior addiction, binging and purging. At around 11 years old, I would participate in a childish attempt at control in the bathroom of my childhood home. Door locked, check. Door closed, check. Over and over, I would find relief in binge eating to the point of physical exhaustion, shame, and defeat, only to reward myself with a sense of control I only experienced with each flush of the toilet. This is what I had control over: food. Where my emotions were painful, bulimia soothed them, if only for a moment. My secret life in the bathroom lasted for years. It's still sometimes present in my life today. I have very rigid rules in my life around food, which I continue to break. Then once again, I remind myself that recovery is never going to be about food, drugs, or whatever maladaptive vices creep in. It's about facing discomfort, owning my feelings of fear and sadness, and working through them. Just as my first addiction rooted with behaviors would keep me behind a locked bathroom door in my adolescence, my substance addictions would keep me trapped in the same place, behind a locked door, in a bathroom, in a bedroom, wherever it was. I was locked in a room full of shame, my soul desperate for love and connection, and a mind so tortured by my own thoughts and emotions, the option of suicide was always just right below the surface. My morbid equation of comfort: if X, then Y. I can continue to share with you all of the terrible things that happened to me as a child, all the painful experiences I've had as an adult, so that I get the stock response of what I'm accustomed to hearing when I share my story. Oh, Tara, now I can see why you would have turned to drugs. If I tell you enough, maybe you too can make sense of my addictions, cultivate an ability for you to understand why, and provide a space of where you forgive me my sins. But the reality is, nothing that happened to me is unique in the world. Everyone suffers from painful life experiences. We all endure heartache from a host of different sources, and none of that excuses my choices. My choices were mine. I own them. I am not proud of the things that I've done while in active substance use, but I also recognize the driving forces behind all of my choices, and that allows me room to forgive not only myself, but the events and the people in my life that caused me harm, that helped create my fear of the world. Earlier, I mentioned that I was faced with one choice left, prison or treatment. I chose treatment. Treatment for me came in the form of participating in the 7th District Felony Drug Court Program. And to be honest, there was only one person in my life at the time that believed I could succeed. It was my mother-in-law. Maybe it's her optimistic nature, but I think maybe it was driven by her desperate need to see me being able to properly parent my children and to just see me get better. Whatever it was, I hung on to her faith in me until I had some of my own, and then I could start seeing others around me cheering me on, supporting me, believing in me. I approached therapy and treatment as a forced piece of compliance for the first 4 or 5 months, a long time before I recognized that no one's answers or suggestions would be helpful to me if they were in response to my half-truths. I decided that I could always go back to using again if I wanted to, but in the meantime, it would be my choice. My choice to participate or not. My choice to show up. Suddenly, when the handcuffs were no longer the driving force, they began feeling more like a protective factor. I have been in long-term recovery since January 24th, 2012. 7 years goes by so quickly. On one hand, it seems an entire lifetime ago when I finally took that first step in the most difficult and beautiful journey of my life. And on the other, it seems like yesterday. Navigating and sorting through everything that my addiction had hidden for so many years was no small feat. I'm so very thankful I had help along the way. Today, I can honor the space between no longer and not yet. I no longer use substances to ease my discomfort, and my life is not yet all that I want for it to be. But for the most part, life is good. Is it good because I'm in recovery? Is it good because I have supportive friends and family, a fulfilling job, and some hobbies that I enjoy? Yes. But it's good because I know it's not bad. It's good because I have a bigger space between no longer and not yet than I used to think. This keeps me working on things that meet my own needs. Good allows me room to grow. It grounds me to remember it's no longer bad. Good reminds me to keep going. And good reminds me that there's plenty of time left for great. A final thought before I close today. Addictions cannot be solved behind closed doors. We must recover out loud. If we measure success by only one outcome, all other progress won't be noticeable to us or to each other. It closes out the possibility that there are multiple pathways to recovery. Some of us recover with medication, some with exercise, the 12 steps, others when they find their purpose. Some with therapy, and some recover with a combination of different supports. I recovered with love and drug court. It may take some of us years to put the pieces back together, but recovery is always possible as long as we never give up on ourselves or on each other. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shirley. I'm also a woman in long-term recovery. Let me start by saying this is one of the most terrifying things I've done in my life. I'm supposed to be sharing my story. I've thought about it and wrote a million things about it. But just what do I say, what do I share, and what do I let go of? My childhood was a rough one. Abusive father that drank a lot. Holidays were the worst. My parents always worked. School was never, I need to see too. School was never my thing. I was always in trouble for not doing well. My parents divorced when I was 11, and and that's when my life changed. One with my dad, even though I was scared of him when he drank, but he would buy my cigarettes and beer. By the time I was 13, I would leave home for days at a time, be found and go to DT, go home, and be out running around, drinking, smoking pot, sleeping around, hanging with the cool kids. Was put in a foster home, never went to school there either. Would catch the city bus for school, met some people, would sometimes not go home. Then the police would pick me up, take me back to the foster home. They finally took me out of school completely. Got to go back home, which only lasted about a week. Then I was back out running around, drinking, smoking pot, sleeping with men, ended up pregnant. So I came home. At that time, my options were abortion, adoption, leave and come back, and my mother, of course, would be hers. I didn't do any of them. Well, that's not true. I let her adopt him. My son always tells me, no regrets. Well, what's it called when we hang out? I wished I would have been smart enough to realize the amazing gift he was, and I missed out on him growing into this amazing human being. As my life continued, I remember standing across the street from a cafe, watching about 30 motorcycles pull up, and I told myself that I was gonna hang out with them one day. Well, not even a year later, there I was, riding on the back of someone's motorcycle. Then for the next 30 years, and there I stayed, always found them no matter what state I went. When I was 19, I hitchhiked from Denver, Colorado to Buffalo, New York for my dream biker. Ended up turning around and hitchhiking back. Sex, drugs, motorcycles was what I lived for. Lots of crazy things done and a wild life. When I was in my late 30s, I was arrested for drugs. And when I had a chance to be sober and not live like that, it took me many more years to find my way. 6 years to get off probation. Probation told me I was going to prison. No way, scared me. Sorry. So I traveled the recovery road for 8 years, took a step back and returned to the road. On my way back, I realized that something was missing in my recovery. Found out it was service of others, being able to reach my hand out and hold theirs till they could pull themselves up. I've grown to love God. I remember about 6 years ago, I went looking for a place to worship God. Went to many churches. My heart was not very full with many of them. On this one Sunday, I went and checked out the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's my church today. My bishop and the congregation are just some of the most amazing people. I have not had to lie or be someone I am not with them. Been baptized for 6 years. Today I have my son, grandkids in my life, and I'm able to be there for them. I have guardianship of my great-grandson. I never thought I would be as fulfilled as I am without the lifestyle I had chosen for myself. But guess what? I am.
So my story has always been a little foggy and misplaced at times, but my message is very clear. When I think back to as far as I can remember, I have always shown signs of addiction. They just weren't as clear-cut as doing meth or drinking. For me, it was little signs like skipping school, breaking the rules, and stealing cigarettes. It was partly the adrenaline, but that wasn't all. I have always, my entire life, suffered from the need to want more. As I look back now at how my life progressed into 30-plus years of addiction, I can see the many different roles it played in my life. In the beginning, it was the need for acceptance and belonging to something, anything, good or bad. Back then, it didn't really matter. In my very early years, I was a fast learner with substances, and I had some willing teachers. I started drinking and using before I was even a teenager. It was fun, and it felt good. My home life wasn't exactly the most loving, caring, fun place to be, and so it was the exact relief I needed at the time. Feeling good was crucial to my childhood. Little did I know just how much substances would play the relief role in my life. Growing up, I have always been uncomfortable in my own skin, insecure and self-conscious. I thought it was a defect from birth and that I was born this way, and I'm happy to announce that I was not. As I get further along in my recovery, these feelings and beliefs are becoming less and less. Thank God for that, because that can be a tough place to live every day, not being good enough, that is, for anything. I talked earlier about the different roles addiction played in my life. It seems that certain drugs and certain times knew their parts to play. Alcohol and meth were, I believe, the star players of my addiction, although I never allowed any drug to feel left out. Those two in particular played the biggest roles. I didn't really have clear feelings or emotions. A lot of them just looked like anger, so I learned to stuff them early on because they were wrong or didn't seem to really matter. After a while, I couldn't stand to feel anything anymore, so I learned to alter everything. I really thought I was onto something, but as it turns out, this was just the perfect recipe for being completely lost and confused. Alcohol was my courage, my voice, and my connection with people. Marijuana was my happy place. And meth, it seemed to be the fixer of my sorrow, the blinder of my truth, and it made me feel like a champion. And for that, I just wanted more. I lived my life contently for a lot of years like this. I didn't even notice the dark nothing that was about to consume me. I call it this because there is no other way to describe how I felt. I felt like I was a dark nothing. Now alcohol was the lack of my control, the cause of my anger, and my tool for pushing people away. Marijuana was the paranoia that everybody was out to get me. And meth, it was the reason for my sorrow, the blinder of my truth, and it made me feel hopeless and worthless. What once served its purpose for comfort was now the leading cause of my discomfort, but I refused to believe that, and I just wanted more. That noise needed to be silenced. Through the early 2000s, I had multiple glimpses of hope and sobriety, so I for sure knew life could be better, but I didn't know how to keep it. I was constantly comparing myself to others and their progress, and so my own was never good enough. No matter how great I did, still something I work on and struggle with today. I never changed my surroundings when I was sober. Things just always stayed the same, so I was always feeling lost and constantly searching for who I am. I didn't realize then that it was an inside job, and life wasn't about finding yourself, but creating yourself and being kind to yourself along the way. Still something I work on and struggle with today. I used to be ashamed to admit when I was struggling. I thought it didn't matter and I was doing recovery wrong and I wasn't good enough. In fact, I used to have this therapist that always told me, "You're not special." I used to think, who does he think he is saying that to me? But then the more he said it, the more I heard it. And what he was actually saying is, you're not alone. You're not the only one who's scared, who struggles, or the only one that makes mistakes. You're not special, you're human. To this day, I use these words when I'm feeling special, and then I am able to overcome the feeling of being a mistake rather quickly. I am coming up on 5 years in recovery this year, and something is different this time. This time I don't feel like I'm white-knuckling my sobriety. I feel like I am on a journey, and I don't feel alone. This time, I know that I have safe people, and that in my darkest hour I can call them, and they will just sit with me for however long it takes. This time, I know that it's okay to be uncomfortable in my own skin and insecure, just like I am right now. Because it's a temporary discomfort, and in a minute, it will all go away, and I know I'll be okay. This time, I know that it's the contacts you make in life that help you get ahead, so I don't hesitate to ask for help. I surround myself with people who love me and who believe in me and who can do this for me on the days that I cannot do this for myself. I still struggle today, but I'm getting better and stronger and wiser and kinder, and today I actually believe this. Less than 5 years ago, I thought I was going to die in my addiction. Truth is, I was so miserable that I hoped I would, but I didn't, and today I couldn't be more grateful. I'm here today feeling completely blessed with these incredible women beside me, sharing my story with you, all because of a glimpse of hope, some kind, loving words, and a reached out hand that said, "We've got this." No judgment, no stigma, no questions, and I will stay here today because I believe it. I believe in my journey. I believe we all deserve to live. We just need to learn how, and I believe that no one should have to learn this alone.
At the age of 19 was when I was introduced to a pill changed my whole life. Okay, hold on, let me stop. Okay. At the age of 19 was when I was introduced to a pill that I thought had changed my whole life for the best. After having my daughter, I had suffered from postpartum depression. Doing the simplest things was huge to me. But like most people, I didn't want to admit I was suffering or let alone had a mental health disorder. I would watch all my friends who had kids, houses, husbands, etc. be this super mom and wife, which then left me even more depressed and made me hate myself. I remember the day, clear as could be, when I was given my first Percocet. I'll never forget it because the moment that that pill kicked in was the moment my whole life would change. I felt great. I was being the super mom and wife. I had energy to do everything I needed to. I even felt better about myself, and my self-hate and bad feelings were gone. That one pill took all my bad. That one pill was magic, or so I thought. But what I didn't know, how much that one pill would take from me, that it wasn't actually a gain at all. That one pill I thought was magic now had control of my life. Over the next 10 years of my life, my substance use disorder grew and grew. I lost cars, homes, friends, family, 2 beautiful kids as mom and dad. And most of all, I lost myself. I'm sorry. My substance abuse disorder was out of control, and I knew it. My biggest fear was my kids growing up without me. I wanted to be in recovery, but I was too scared to do it. I feared the withdrawals and feared the unknown. I had tried to get clean many times, but the physical, mental, and emotional pain brought me back to using it no time at all. I remember telling someone I wanted to get off these pills so bad. That day I will never forget either. It was when I was introduced to meth as a helper off the pills. Desperately, I tried it. Eventually, I did come off the pills, right to something worse, right to rock bottom, honestly, hell. Within the matter of months, I had lost everything I loved. I hated myself even more now for what I had become. I remember looking in the mirror telling myself that I was worthless. I didn't deserve to live, that I should kill myself, which then led me straight to my first suicide attempt. I was released from the hospital, and my thoughts and feelings didn't change. If anything, they were more intense, which then led me to attempt again. My second attempt, something powerful happened. The Xanax I had taken kicked in harder than I'd ever had. I put the gun down and passed out. When I woke up for the first time, I was scared for myself. No, I didn't get clean right at that moment, but watered that seed of hope. I was not going to give up. After being clean for a few days and really struggling to stay clean, I went to someone who I avoided at all costs for help. My brother, who was a police officer. I begged him for help. Something that would turn out to be so powerful happened. He took me to the sheriff's office. I sat in a room with 2 detectives who also knew my family. I remember being scared to death, thinking all the bad that could go wrong and probably would. But the most powerful thing happened, the breakthrough. I remember Detective John Barnett telling me, "Your daughter's going to end up in a foster home, and it's going to be your fault." Those words cut through to me. I also remember him telling me, "You are lost, but what is lost can always be found. You can overcome this. Look at me." He shared his own personal struggles he had faced in his life. Before I stood up to leave, he had gave me his card and said, "If you ever feel like using, you call me." They gave me a reality check that was wrapped in compassion. I walked in and left there with hope and a push in the right direction. I walked in 4 days clean. I am now a person in long-term recovery. Recovery was so scary to me because it was the unknown, and I knew I would soon have to face everything I had been running and numbing from. But I knew without insurance, I had no chance of getting into a treatment center. I remember feeling so hopeless when I realized this, but I still kept on fighting. I got myself into therapy and was placed on naltrexone. I took each day and each moment as they came. I found passion for running, I found passion for reading, but still was scared that I might not be able to stay in recovery, even with the awesome support system I had. I remember being clean for around 3 or 4 weeks when I had the most amazing experience happen. I was pushing my youngest daughter on her trike and stopped, and the most amazing feelings came over me, and I began to cry. I hadn't felt anything like this. It was pure joy, happiness, and gratefulness, and I realized at that moment that I was being the mom that I thought I had to be high to be. From that moment on, I started falling in love with the little moments and finding overwhelming happiness from them. Things that I almost gave up, from handprints on a window to dirty faces, to laughing with my parents, running with my dogs, sunsets, flowers, and so much more. I began to learn not only was I began to learn not only was I learning who I was, but I was also on a spiritual journey, and that there was a lesson to be taught to me in everything I had went through and would continue to go through. That even the bad times, I was taught a lesson. My recovery has been amazingly hard and amazingly beautiful. It has been a journey where I have learned who I am. I have learned that speaking your truth is healing. Even though it was hard with a stigma wrapped around the word addiction, I learned that every person who was judging me did not have their hand out to help. And they sure wasn't there on a bad day, so why should I let their opinions of me matter? I have learned to love the unknown and to never let fear stop me. Recovery has been being able to stand tall and not feel ashamed for what I was, for it has brought me here, to me. I am Savannah Eley, and I am a woman in long-term recovery from a substance use, but I'm also a loving mother of 3, soon-to-be wife, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a friend, a co-founder of a suicide support group, a certified peer support specialist, a warrior, and a strong-willed, resilient woman. I have crawled my way out of the darkness to spread hope and love for anyone who needs it. What was lost has now been found, and I continue to find me every day, and recovery has gave me that, and for that I will always be grateful.